Hey, welcome to the Science and Education segment here on Impact. I'm Barbara Brabetz. With me today is Robert Nied. Robert is on the board of directors of the Center for Sustainable Rural Communities. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Barbara.
I'm glad to have you here. I've seen what wonderful work your organization has done. You are one of a few, well, many board of directors who are on the board of this organization. It's a nonprofit that's based out of all of the state, really.
It is. We have a center in Schoharie County in the town of Richmondville, but we really are concerned about rural communities across the state of New York.
Now, 6 years ago, your organization started as Schoharie Valley Watch, and the organization really decided at some point in time, along with the individuals in the organization, that the mission that was really centered on Schoharie County really needed to expand. So could you talk about where that mission was and where that mission will go, has gone?
When we initially started, we were concentrating on a very kind of narrow geographical area and the concerns that were raised by residents in that narrow area. They had to do with environmental issues, they had to do with local government issues, but we realized pretty quickly that those same issues were applicable across rural communities in upstate New York. So it seemed to make sense to kind of expand our scope geographically and programmatically to offer the kinds of things we're offering locally in Schoharie County to all of the rural communities in New York State.
Could you give us an idea of what your organization does offer to the citizen who happens to live in a non-urban area in New York?
Right. We offer training, education, outreach. Our mission is to focus on those things that improve the quality of life in rural communities in upstate New York. We really want to expand economic opportunity, but at the same time we want to maintain that rural character that attracts people to rural communities to begin with. So we want to give people the tools so they can feel comfortable, they can feel confident, and they can advocate for themselves, their families, and for those rural communities.
Now, you've chosen a rural lifestyle, but you don't necessarily come from a rural background. You're from New Jersey originally?
I grew up in central New Jersey, but surprisingly it was a rural environment. I worked on a farm as a young kid, and I saw the community build and expand rapidly, and that kind of development seemed to be unplanned at best, and really was a diminishment of the characteristics of the community, which a lot of people loved. So you began to feel less comfortable as the community expanded. And I carried with me the sense that there was a better approach. There was a way of approaching rural communities where we can increase opportunities, economic opportunities, cultural opportunities, without destroying the rural character of those areas as well.
So those unfortunate mistakes that may have been made in central Jersey, you don't want them to continue or propagate in wherever you put your home, and I'm sure none of us want it as well.
Exactly. I think we have an enormous opportunity here to really build vibrant, sustainable rural communities that don't sacrifice that rural character.
So let's talk about some of the things that we don't want in rural communities. What are some of the unfortunate mistakes that other states and other communities have made as they've seen expansion, growth, either economic or from a manufacturing base or an employment base? How things can go wrong. What can go wrong in rural communities?
Well, I think there's a tendency to view rural communities, particularly by those outside of the rural communities, as just a repository for resources. I mean, we have forest land, we have lumber, we have minerals, we have natural gas, and we have very inexpensive land in some cases. So it's viewed as an opportunity for development, and sometimes that development is not appropriate, sometimes it's exploitive, and it really ultimately harms the rural character. What we're suggesting is that there are development opportunities in rural communities that can preserve that character, can provide economic opportunities, can provide exposure to cultural opportunities, to educational opportunities, to healthcare, to a whole host of things that make the community a better place to live without altering that rural character dramatically or giving up that rural character. We think there is a balance, and that's what we're striving for.
So in talking about that fine balance that you have between giving people the skills and opportunities they need to succeed if they live in a rural community but not get to that exploitative, out of control development or resource allocation, what does your organization do to educate people in the rural community to tell them or give them information as to how to tread that line very, very carefully?
Well, the first thing we deal with is the fact that there is a disadvantage for people in rural communities. There's socioeconomic disadvantages, there's educational disadvantages, but also there is reduced access to technology, for instance. It is very difficult for people in rural communities, even with great ideas, to research those ideas and find ways to implement those ideas, because in many cases they don't even have access to high-speed internet, for instance. So we actually have a brick and mortar center where we bring people in. If they have something they need to work on, they have an issue, an initiative, they have a concern, we give them the tools to navigate the process, the local government process. We give them the tools to research. We literally have high-speed internet. We have computer facilities. We have subject matter experts. We have people that can help them do the research. We help them gain that confidence so they can go out there and say, I have an idea, here's what I want to see happening. And here's how I want my local government, for instance, to react to that. How can they help me? So we give them that confidence to do that.
Now, we were talking earlier before the show about access to local government and how in an area like Schenectady or Albany that may not be as easy, perhaps, surprisingly, as in a rural community. Could you explain that to the viewers? How that works?
Well, here's a case where we have an advantage in a rural community. We have an intimacy between the residents, the citizens, and their elected officials. Many times, those elected officials are their neighbors. Many times, they live next door. So there is an access that people in urban or suburban environments don't have. They can reach their elected officials much more easily. But despite that, we still see a kind of level of intimidation on the part of residents. They're very reluctant to go and approach their elected officials. They're very reluctant, certainly in a formal setting, to go to a meeting and say, I think this should happen, and here's what I expect from you as my elected official. We want to give them, again, the confidence to be able to do that. We're beginning a lecture series coming up in November, and the first lecture is by Robert Freeman, who is the executive director of the New York State Department of State Committee on Open Government. And he's going to talk about residents, not just rural residents, but citizens in general, gaining access to the local government process, what to expect from meetings, what their rights and responsibilities are at government meetings, and access to information. What information do people have a right to gain access to, and how can they use that information to, again, advocate for themselves, their family, and their communities?
It's very empowering to individuals who are relatively scattered. They're not really at that critical mass that you might see where demonstrations or sit-ins or placard holding meetings might not happen. You've got only 30,000 people in all of Schoharie County and many other states with even smaller populations across New York State, but yet they still can learn how to get in touch with their local officials and make their points known.
Indeed, and I think they really can leverage that intimacy, first of all, because they have access, easy access to their government. If they feel confident and they know what to expect from their government, they know what their government can and can't do. And I think when they have ideas and they have a vision and they have a creative passion for improving their community, there's a real opportunity for them to do that, and we hope to help them do that.
Well, along with the idea of Center for Sustainable Rural Communities and the idea of economic and sustainability, there's also that environmental sustainability as well. Do you want to talk about some of the expertise that's on your board or the services that you provide citizens to talk about other issues besides economic sustainability?
Right. Well, as an example, on our board of directors, we have a physician who is an expert in the impacts of contaminants in the environment on human health. So if there is a debate, for instance, in the community about, and one we're experiencing right now, the potential impacts of gas extraction, natural gas extraction, or hydraulic fracturing. It's not as if we're just kind of pulling facts out of the air. We have subject matter experts that can inform that debate and give residents the kind of information they really want and need to have to participate in that kind of debate. And our hope is to really make the center a resource of subject matter experts, of information. So people can have an intelligent discussion and debate not only amongst themselves and arrive at a conclusion that's good for the community, but to have that kind of aware, confident debate with their elected officials as well. So on a whole host of subjects, we will provide resources and subject matter experts to help with the discussion, to help get to what the reality is of the situation, and then to advocate for a reasonable course forward.
And again, this isn't just a Catskill area issue or even a local Albany, Schenectady, Troy rural area issue. We're really talking about the rural communities across all of upstate New York.
We are, and I think these are applicable beyond even upstate New York. But for our purposes, we're concentrating on upstate New York because that's what we know best.
So coming up again, you mentioned on Thursday, November 8th, you have one of your many talks that'll be available to the public. Robert Freeman, Access to Local Government, will discuss how to use your time effectively with local government, how to really know what is available in a meeting setting, but also online, or what other information is available to contact your local officials.
Yes, yes. And this is the first in a series of lectures. In the spring, we'll be partnering with SUNY Cobleskill to offer a whole host of lectures and seminars. And these will range on subjects from sustainable agriculture, things like farm to table, economic development in a rural community. How can we encourage entrepreneurial home-based business, for instance? We're going to be talking about regional energy policies. We're certainly going to be talking about the hot-button issues like hydrofracking and pipelines and the infrastructure that comes along with gas extraction, for instance. So we're hoping this will really inform the public and help them make decisions, because there are a lot of decisions to be made in rural communities as they're faced with development pressure, as they're faced with economic pressure. We don't want rural citizens to be at a disadvantage in that discussion.
If they need other information beyond the lecture series, then certainly your website is a place to go first.
And they can contact us through that website and begin a dialogue, and we're open to anyone's suggestions, ideas, concerns, and that's what we're there for. We want to be a resource.
And also, I'm sure you're looking for volunteers. It's an ever-expanding mission. Subject matter experts are not something that you just pick off of a tree, but
Yes.
if there are people out there who are willing to really engage with their communities, then you're also looking for extra help.
Absolutely.
All nonprofits are looking for extra
Yes.
help.
We're looking for expertise in agriculture, we're looking for expertise in the legal field, paralegals and attorneys, and we're looking for just plain folks who want to help.
Robert, thanks again for coming in. Again, Robert Nied, my guest today. You are a member of the Board of Directors for the Center for Sustainable Rural Communities. I appreciate you coming in and talking about what is really pertinent to all New Yorkers, not just those in the rural community. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me, Barbara.
You've been watching the Science and Education segment on Impact. I'm Barbara Brabetz. Thanks for watching.
Proctors, bringing the best in arts, education, and entertainment.